So I got my Steam Deck at the end of April back last year in 2022. And figured it was about time to actually review the thing a year later. And a lot of that boils down to, at first I really wasn't sure what to make of this device. I wasn't sure where it was going to fit in. Is it going to be like a Switch? Is it going to not be? And as I've used it over the course of the year, it is turned into probably one of my most used devices, besides maybe my mini forums HX99G that I have. I want to make this clear. When it comes to this review, I'm reviewing the deck as a game console that happens to do some PC shit. This review won't be looking at things like desktop mode and all that stuff. That's not what I'm looking at the deck as. So first up, we have Ergonomics. It fits really well in the hand despite being a bit big, and those trackpads are a killer feature. The thumbsticks are good. The button placement is well done. The buttons on the back feel good. It's just the overall ergonomics and hand positioning of the device is actually really good. I've kind of equated it like somebody took a 7-inch screen and crammed it in between the control portions of the Wii U gamepad. I'm one of the weird ones. I actually like the Wii U gamepad like ergonomically. Less toy feeling though. The thing that I also like about the deck is that the hand grips give you a nice solid feel, unlike say like the flat back of the Nintendo Switch. Overall build quality, it's a plastic device, but it's not cheap plastic. And trust me, I've used some cheap devices. It doesn't bend and creak and all that stuff. This is not a shot at the Switch, but it feels like sometimes if you move the Switch too much, it feels like it's gonna break almost. Like there's that weird rattle with the Joy-Cons when they're attached. It feels kind of flimsy and whatnot. It's a solidly well-built piece of kit, and I can't complain about the overall build quality of the device. Speakers. So for me, I've been using mostly Bluetooth headphones on this. I'm not going to lie, they're decent quality laptop speakers is about the most positive thing I can say about them. They're better than the Switch, but they're not better than like what you'd use on like a desktop PC or even a TV, really. It's a portable device, so I'm not really looking at the speakers too much when it comes to this particular device. One criticism I will have about it is the fan noise for some can be a bit loud and kind of obnoxious. It doesn't really bother me too much, and it all depends on which model of the deck that you got. So do keep that in mind if you're, sensitive to background noise and fan noise and that kind of stuff. So the model that I got was the base $400 model. So that's the 64 gig. I spent about the $50 and I upgraded to a 512 NVMe drive. It's literally like 10 screws on the back, and prying the back covering off can be a little scary. But once you actually figure out where to go with it, it's actually not as bad as it looks. Get that done. Now remember, if you go this route, it is a 2230 drive, not the bigger ones. Criticism of the pricing structure. Valve, I will say, holy shit. You go from 400, then you get a 512 gig NVMe, and it is literally a $250 add-on charge. That's like fucking Apple levels there. So the biggest one everyone is going to want to talk about is the dock experience with the deck. So the docking experience has dramatically improved for the better since it shipped. It's improved a lot since when I first got it. Those that want to know the experience, it's not an instant like drop it in a dock and it just kind of flips over to the TV like the Switch. That's what a lot of people are always going to compare it to, and a lot of that has to do simply with one thing, and that is the USB-C adapter location is on the top as opposed to the bottom, and that's a choice Valve made. So yeah, you got to drop it into the dock and actually plug in the USB-C. So it's not quite drop and go, but overall the docking experience, if that doesn't really bother you, if plugging in a cable bothers you, then well, that's more of a you thing. Personally for me, and this is what this is, I'm not that hard up to, go plug in a little fucking USB-C cable on a dock. Fire up any Bluetooth controller with it. Any Bluetooth, like I have done PS4, I've done an Atari VCS controller, I've done PS5 controllers and Xbox Series X controllers. They all work. You can even use the Joy-Cons if you want to go that route. Why? I have no idea, but that's your personal preference. All right, so let's talk software. This is going to be the longest section probably for this review. 9,000 plus verified or playable games for a first-gen device. No other device in history of gaming can currently say that. No, there's no need to rebuy every time the next generation of a console game comes out. You know, like there is with the big three, and just hoping that they might decide to grace us with backwards compatibility. The deck UI / new big picture mode is much cleaner and faster to navigate than the old one. The old one, there's certain elements of the old one that I liked, but this one is much cleaner to get to the store and that kind of stuff. Better usage of space and doesn't have as many layers to dig into to actually change stuff. The verified for deck games, basically the first thing you see when you jump over into the store is a nice little UX touch so that people can just be like, hey, these work on the deck. A few criticisms on the software end, though. The UI can be a little laggy at times. I'm not talking like horrible lag. Like when I say laggy, I mean like occasional micro stutters within the UI. I'm not talking like Nintendo Switch eShop kind of lag where. And the other portion is the verified for deck stuff. Valve needs to clean that up and make that whole experience a little bit better and what qualifies for it, and maybe play the entirety of the game to see if it actually is totally verified for deck. So that process could be cleaned up a little bit. Now, in the software front, we're going to talk game compatibility. Your mileage may vary here. So for myself, a flat 1,000 games currently on Steam. As of the recording of this review, I have 190 that are labeled as a verified for deck. And if we're counting playable titles, my library is about 400-ish that are available for me to play on the deck right now. Now, I do not play a ton of multiplayer style games. I'm just not a fan. I'm not that person. Apex, Fortnite, you're barking up the wrong fucking tree. I give two shits. Those games could go burn in hell for all I care. If you enjoy them, cool. Not my style of gaming. As far as multiplayer games that I would play, the only one I've played on the deck, Warframe. That has been a fantastic experience. Besides the default controller layout being garbage. I'm not sure who to blame on that one. Just go use a community layout. That's all I'm going to say. For me, as a solo player, person who prefers playing single player games, I've played games like Final Fantasy VII Remake, Persona 5 Royal, Necromunda Hired Gun, Ghost Runner. It all depends on the type of game that you are looking for. If those style of games or indie games are more your flavor of gaming, then so depending on your gaming preferences, that will determine kind of whether or not you view the deck as a good or bad piece of tech and worth your money. Now, battery life. Battery life has been a criticism. I criticize the battery life. Now, if we're talking default battery life, I would say 2 to 3 hours. Now, once you start getting into the software portion where you tweak the power settings and all that stuff and, change the refresh rate to like 40 hertz and mess with the TDP and all the other stuff, you can get a lot, and depending on the style of game you're playing. So generically, what I've been doing is I drop the games down to 40 hertz. I find what the game is using for wattage based on what Mango HUD gives me kind of as an average. And I will drop the total power usage down to roughly what that is using. So that increases my battery life. My overall experience is about 2.5 to 4 hours for battery life. So let's talk ecosystem. Ecosystem, third-party plugins, a very user-repairable device, open source shell files for people who want to do 3D printing and make custom shells. Install the OS you want if you don't like the default experience. Constant software support from the community and Valve. So the improvements to the OS even to help the competition, like the work that went into USB-C docks to improve the experience. Valve has shown a massive amount and commitment with its weekly, if not more often, so updates to SteamOS. So you have the software support from not just the company, but the community and the hardware and software portions of the community also. That's a really strong argument for the device. So the question at the end of the day, though, is this deck worth it in 2023 with the hot new competition heating up with the competitors like the Asus ROG Ally, IMEO, GPD, and 1X player. Again, this is personal. So for me, I will say yes, the deck is worth it at the $400 price point. However, if you're solely a specifications hunter, then one of the competitors' devices might be a better choice for you. I'm going to say that because of the third-party deck-specific accessories and how many accessories are currently available, I don't imagine those third-party... There are a ton of third-party deck-specific accessories. So my question boils down to those competitors and their devices. Are they going to have a large selection of those third-party device-specific accessories? And how much of those are going to stay backwards compatible with, say, another iteration of the device? If you're going by history and looking at other similar fields like phones, those devices will have some third-party accessories, but not specifically for the device, or very, very limited. Talked about this a little bit earlier. The software optimizations that Valve continues to make and get the most out of the system through its continued OS improvements and optimizations for games, etc. My thing is with the other devices is basically, to me, it is the square peg, round hole, use triangle to bash the circle through the square and kind of deal. It's just Windows slapped on a device with a controller and a small screen. Windows generically, in that small screen size, is not well suited for it. And most OEMs that do this and try to get into the software end of things have a terrible history of making software. And then the question becomes, how long are they going to support it? So if you're a console gamer, the deck is the best option for you currently because it eases you into that open kind of ecosystem of PC gaming without really kind of overwhelming you. The other devices, I'm going to recommend, if you are a Berber, PC Master Race, specs are everything, then you might want to look the fuck elsewhere.